Word gun. Description: a type of weapon that fires projectiles, typically bullets. It can refer to firearms used for hunting, sport, or, unfortunately, for harmful purposes. It's important to be aware of the serious implications associated with this word. Phrases of example. First, he pulled a gun from his coat. Second, the gun was cold and heavy in his hand. Third, he found a gun in the drawer, a relic of a forgotten past. Word firearm. Description: a type of weapon designed to discharge a projectile bullet, shot, using explosive force. It's a formal term for guns and other similar weapons, and often appears in legal or technical contexts discussing regulations or incidents. Phrases of example. First, the Colt was a firearm, loaded and ready, a grim promise. Second, he slipped the firearm into his jacket, feeling its cold weight. Third, the firearm's history was etched into the worn metal. Word worldwide. Description: means involving or affecting the entire world. It describes something that is global in scope, reaching across many countries and cultures. It is used to indicate something's extensive reach or universality. Phrases of example. First, the plague had become a worldwide phenomenon, sweeping across nations. Second, it was a worldwide sensation, a story everyone wanted to hear. Third, the crisis spread worldwide, impacting economies and lives everywhere. Word credibility. Description: refers to the quality of being believable or trustworthy. It describes the ability of a person, source, or information to be regarded as reliable. It's often used when assessing the accuracy or honesty of something presented. Phrases of example. First, the credibility of the witness was questioned by the defense attorney. Second, he lacked the credibility to lead the discussion on ethics. Third, the report's credibility hinged on the accuracy of the data. Word literature. Description: refers to written works, especially those considered of artistic or intellectual value. It encompasses novels, poems, plays, and essays, representing a culture's ideas and stories. It's used when discussing books or writing with a cultural or artistic significance. Phrases of example. First, literature is not propaganda. Literature is literature. Second, literature adds to reality. It does not imitate it. Third, great literature should give us a new way of seeing things. Word few. Description: means a small number of something. It indicates a limited quantity, less than many but more than none. It's used to describe a countable group and often implies surprise or slight disappointment. Phrases of example. First, there were but a few who saw the coming storm. Second, a few words will do, I assure you. Third, a few kind people gave me shelter. Word below. Description: indicates a lower position or level. It describes something that is situated or occurring at a place or degree that is lower than a reference point. Often used to compare height, temperature, or status. Phrases of example. First, below him, the world was a map of green and gold, a beautiful, silent place. Second, the water was cold, and the depths below were dark with the secrets of the sea. Third, and so they went on, with the city lights below them, like a sea of stars. Word remains. Description: refers to what is left over after something has been used or removed. It can also denote the visible or physical traces of something that no longer exists in its entirety. It's often used in formal contexts to describe remnants or vestiges. Phrases of example. First, the faintest remains of a smile lingered on his lips. Second, these fragile remains of a shattered dream. Third, the ruins remain, a testament to a forgotten empire. Word associate. Description: to connect someone or something with a particular quality or idea. It means to link or relate things, either directly or indirectly. It can also mean to spend time with someone regularly. Phrases of example. First, you can't associate with a man who has no past. for he is a man who has no future. Second, I could never associate such a beautiful face with such a terrible heart. Third, it is a thing that a person should never associate with another, for it is a thing of death. Word, accident. Description, a sudden, unplanned event that causes damage or injury. It's typically something negative and unintentional, often involving harm or loss. It describes an unexpected and unfortunate occurrence. Phrases of example. First, he had a serious accident, and it changed his life. Second, it was no accident that I was there. It was destiny. Third, the car accident was a terrible thing, but it was not the end of the world. Word, impressed. Description, feeling admiration or respect for someone or something because of their skill, qualities, or achievements. It indicates a positive feeling of approval and can suggest a sense of awe or wonder. Phrases of example. First, he was impressed by the vastness of the universe. Second, I was impressed by her courage and determination. Third, the audience was deeply impressed by the performance. Word, oxygen. Description, refers to a colorless, odorless gas essential for respiration in most living organisms. It's a vital component of the air we breathe and supports combustion. It's frequently used in scientific, medical, and environmental contexts. Phrases of example. First, without oxygen, life is impossible. Without hope, life is a burden. Second, the air grew thin, oxygen scarce, as they ascended the treacherous peak. Third, the tank was nearly empty, the oxygen dwindling with each passing hour. Word, empty. Description, means to remove all contents from something, leaving it vacant. It can refer to physically removing items from a container or space, or figuratively, to deplete a resource or feeling. It indicates a state of being devoid of contents. Phrases of example. First, empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. Second, he felt empty, a hollow shell of the man he once was. Third, empty words, empty promises. Word, no one. Description means not one person at all. It indicates a complete absence of people. Used to say that there is nobody present or that something doesn't belong to anyone. Simple and direct way to express a lack of people. Phrases of example. First, no one sees a well unless it is sunk. Second, no one knows the ending, so why not enjoy the ride? Third, no one ever stopped to ask if I was all right. Word, be. Description indicates existence or a state of being. It connects a subject to a verb or adjective. It expresses what something asterisk is asterisk and is foundational for forming simple sentences describing people, places, and things. Phrases of example. First, to be or not to be, that is the question. Second, it is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. Third, you are what you love, not what loves you. Word, admit. Description means to acknowledge something is true, even if it's uncomfortable or embarrassing. It can also mean to allow someone to enter a place. It suggests recognizing a fact or granting permission. Phrases of example. First, it takes courage to admit that you're wrong. Second, you must admit that you have a certain flair for the dramatic. Third, I had to admit that I was not a man of great courage, but I had to try anyway. Word, narrow. Description means to restrict or make something smaller or more limited in scope. It can refer to narrowing a topic for discussion, reducing options, or limiting the range of possibilities. It suggests a deliberate act of focusing or curtailing. Phrases of example. First, the narrow streets held 1,000 secrets, whispered on the wind. Second, the path narrowed until it was barely wide enough for one to pass. Third, her eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face. Word, largely. Description means mainly or for the most part. It indicates that something is true to a significant extent, but not entirely. It's used to show that something is primarily, but not exclusively, a certain way. Phrases of example. First, the public largely does not care about our situation. Second, the issue was largely ignored by the newspapers. Third, it was largely due to his persistence that the project succeeded. Word psychiatric. Description relates to psychiatry, the branch of medicine focused on diagnosing and treating mental illnesses. It describes things related to mental health professionals, facilities, or treatment approaches, often used in formal or clinical contexts. Phrases of example. First, the patient exhibited a history of psychiatric disturbance and paranoia. Second, his psychiatric profile suggested a deep. Third, she sought psychiatric help, grappling with the complexities of her mind. Word uncomfortable. Description describes a feeling of physical or emotional distress, or a situation that causes unease. It signifies a lack of ease or comfort, often resulting from physical conditions, social awkwardness, or challenging circumstances. Phrases of example. First, I felt uncomfortable being the center of so much attention. Second, it was an uncomfortable truth, but one that needed to be faced. Third, the silence was uncomfortable, heavy with unspoken words. Word neighbor. Description, a person who lives near you. It refers to someone residing in the same area or building. It's a common word for people living close by, often implying a sense of community or proximity. Phrases of example. First, my neighbor is a very kind man, always willing to help. Second, he was my neighbor, and I knew him well. Third, the old man lived next door, a quiet neighbor to us all. Word flexible. Description describes something that can easily change or adapt. It refers to being open to new ideas, willing to compromise, or able to be altered in form or function. It implies a lack of rigidity and an ability to adjust to different situations. Phrases of example. First, she had to be flexible to adapt to whatever came her way. Second, the mind must be flexible to accept new ideas. Third, life is flexible, and it will adjust to the unexpected. Word strive. Description means to try very hard to achieve something difficult. It suggests persistent effort and determination in pursuing a goal. The word implies a sense of ambition and a willingness to overcome obstacles to succeed. Phrases of example. First, we must strive for excellence, not perfection. Second, the struggle itself is never truly lost. We strive to rise. Third, let us strive to leave a world better than the one we found. Word clinic. Description, a facility that offers medical or other professional services, often on an outpatient basis. It's typically smaller than a hospital and focuses on specific types of care or treatments. It implies a more focused and often less intensive medical setting. Phrases of example. First, the doctor's clinic was always bustling, filled with patients seeking care. Second, she went to the free clinic hoping for a cure, but found only disappointment. Third, the small clinic offered solace and hope to those in need. Word headache. Description, a pain in your head. It can be a mild discomfort or a severe throbbing sensation. It's a common ailment that can be caused by stress, illness, or fatigue. It's often used to describe a feeling of annoyance too. Phrases of example. First, I have a headache and I want to lie down. Second, my head aches. I have a headache. Third, a headache and weariness oppressed me. Word well. Description refers to a source of water that typically flows naturally and continuously. It can also denote a place where water bubbles or springs from the ground. It is often used metaphorically to represent a place of health, abundance, or knowledge. Phrases of example. First, the well of memory is deep, and its current strong. Second, the well of their knowledge ran dry with the drought. Third, he drew water from the village well, a source of community and life. Word wet. Description describes something covered or saturated with water or another liquid. It indicates a state of being damp or soaked. It's used to describe objects, people, or places that have come into contact with moisture. Phrases of example. First, her hair was wet and tangled, clinging to her face. Second, the rain came down in sheets, leaving everything wet and glistening. Third, he stepped out of the shower, his skin wet and smooth. Word, manage. Description means to successfully control or deal with something. It can refer to handling tasks, people, or situations. It also means to be in charge of something or someone, often a business or a team. Phrases of example. First, I don't know how he manages to stay so cheerful. Second, you must learn to manage your temper, my boy. Third, she tried to manage her grief, to carry on as if nothing had changed. Word, stunning. Description means strikingly beautiful or impressive. It describes something that evokes a strong feeling of admiration or amazement. It goes beyond simply being attractive. It suggests a powerful and memorable visual impact. Phrases of example. First, her beauty was stunning, a silent, overwhelming force. Second, the view was stunning, a panorama of snow and sky. Third, the performance was stunning, a display of breathtaking skill. Word, field. Description, a place where crops are grown. It can also refer to an area of study, work, or activity. It describes a specific area or domain, whether agricultural, academic, or professional. Phrases of example. First, the fields were golden and ready for harvest. Second, he walked across the field, searching for wildflowers. Third, the farmer surveyed his field with a hopeful eye. Word, pants. Description refers to an item of clothing worn on the legs, typically covering the area from the waist to the ankles. It is a basic garment and a common term for trousers. It's a simple, everyday word. Phrases of example. First, he wore only a shirt and pants. Second, she wore a dress and pants, a defiant style. Third, he tugged at his pants, a nervous habit. Word, dictionary. Description, a book or electronic resource listing words in alphabetical order and giving their meanings, pronunciations, and origins. It's used to look up the definition of a word you don't know. Phrases of example. First, he consulted his dictionary for the meaning of the word. Second, my dictionary of life begins. Third, I have a dictionary of love in my heart. Word, farm. Description means to cultivate land to grow crops or raise animals. It describes the activity of producing food or raw materials from the land, often for commercial purposes. It involves tending to plants and animals for profit. Phrases of example. First, they will farm the land with their own hands. Second, we must farm the fields and build our homes. Third, I want to farm the land and be a farmer. Word, anchor. Description refers to something that provides stability or a fixed point of reference. It can be literal, like a device holding a ship, or figurative, representing a core belief, principle, or relationship that provides security and grounding. Phrases of example. First, she was his anchor in the storm of his life. Second, the anchor dropped with a great splash, securing the ship against the tide. Third, hope is the anchor of the soul, firm and secure. Word, light. Description means to set something on fire or cause it to burn. It can also mean to illuminate something with light. It's often used to describe a flame or to talk about making something visible. Phrases of example. First, he lit a match, and the darkness was banished. Second, let there be light. Third, she lit the lamp, casting a warm glow. Word, thick. Description describes something with considerable depth or density. It can refer to physical thickness, like a thick book, or a figurative thickness, such as a thick accent. It indicates a substantial quality or quantity. Phrases of example. First, the fog was thick and yellow, clinging to the ground. Second, the air was thick with the scent of jasmine and regret. Third, the blanket was thick and warm, a refuge from the cold. Word, intriguing. Description, describes something that is very interesting and arouses curiosity. It suggests something mysterious, captivating, or thought-provoking that holds your attention and makes you want to know more. It implies a sense of fascination and allure. Phrases of example. First, the riddle was intriguing, and it drew him further into the mystery. Second, her silence was intriguing, a compelling invitation to uncover the secrets she held. Third, the prospect of uncovering ancient artifacts was intriguing enough to risk the journey. Word, northern. Description, describes something located in or relating to the north. It can refer to a direction, a region, or a characteristic associated with northern areas, often used with nouns like climate, lights, or region. Phrases of example. First, the northern lights danced across the sky, a breathtaking spectacle. Second, he journeyed north, seeking a new life in the northern territories. Third, the northern wind carried the scent of pine and snow. Word, utterly. Description, means completely or totally. It intensifies an adjective or verb, emphasizing the extent of something. It conveys a strong degree, often implying surprise or shock about the intensity of a situation or feeling. Phrases of example. First, he was utterly defeated, stripped of his illusions and his pride. Second, she felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of unfamiliar faces. Third, the darkness was utterly profound, a suffocating blanket of despair. Word, expand. Description, means to become larger or to increase in size, amount, or importance. It can refer to physical growth, like a building getting bigger, or an increase in scope, like a business growing its operations. Phrases of example. First, the empire was vast, and its influence continued to expand. Second, our knowledge of the universe must expand. Third, the city began to expand rapidly, attracting people from all over. Word, certainty. Description, denotes a state of being completely sure or without doubt. It expresses a feeling of conviction and confidence regarding a fact or situation. It signifies a lack of uncertainty or possibility of error. Phrases of example. First, without certainty, life is a journey into the unknown. Second, there is no certainty in this world, only possibilities. Third, the pursuit of certainty is a fool's errand, leading only to disappointment. Word, long. Description, describes something that has a great distance, time, or length. It can refer to physical measurements, duration, or even a feeling of time passing. It's a basic descriptor used to compare sizes or periods. Phrases of example. First, it was a long way to Tipperary. Second, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Third, the road ahead may be long and winding. Word, dark. Description, describes a lack of light, the opposite of bright. It can also refer to a gloomy or sad feeling. It's often used to describe colors, rooms, or times of day when there isn't much light. Phrases of example. First, the darkness took him, and he was gone. Second, it was a dark and stormy night. Third, the dark forest loomed ahead, full of shadows. Word, diamond. Description, a precious gemstone, known for its brilliance and hardness. It's often used in jewelry and symbolizes rarity, beauty, and enduring value. It can also refer to something excellent or the best of its kind. Phrases of example. First, a diamond is forever. Second, the diamond's glitter dazzled her eyes. Third, she wore a diamond ring, a symbol of her love. Word, parameter. Description, a measurable factor or characteristic that defines a system or process. It's a quantifiable value used to describe or control something, often in technical or scientific contexts. It helps set boundaries or limits for analysis. Phrases of example. First, the parameter of her success was relentless self. Second, each chapter presented a new parameter for their understanding of grief. Third, These are key parameters in assessing. Word basis. Description refers to a foundation or starting point for something. It can be a literal base, or a reason or principle upon which something is built or decided. It indicates the grounds for an argument, action, or belief. Phrases of example. First, I felt the raw and basis essence of his being. Second, he was a man who had no basis. Third, the whole world was a basis of operations. Word core. Description denotes the central or most important part of something. It signifies the fundamental nature or essence of a concept, belief, or object. It is used to highlight the essential or foundational elements of a subject. Phrases of example. First, the core of the argument rested on a single assumption. Second, the core belief of our society is that things can always get better. Third, at the core of everything, there's love, family, friends, and memories. Word poor. Description means lacking sufficient money, resources, or possessions. It can also describe something of low quality or unfortunate circumstances. It's often used to describe a person's financial situation or general condition. Phrases of example. First, it was a poor, dark thing for me to be so happy. Second, he was a poor man, but he had a good heart. Third, poor thing, she was lost and alone. Word ball. Description, a round object used in games and sports. It can also refer to a formal dance or event. It describes something spherical or a social gathering, depending on the context. Phrases of example. First, she wore her sorrow like a ball and chain. Second, I want to have a ball with you, and I want to have it right now. Third, he was a man who lived his life with a ball of dread in his stomach. Word mine. Description refers to a place where minerals, such as coal or metal, are extracted from the earth. It's a location of excavation and resource extraction, often involving tunnels or open pits, where valuable materials are obtained. Phrases of example. First, a mine is a treasure, but it can also be a curse. Second, you will have your mine of golden ore, if you only dig deep enough. Third, the land holds a mine of memories for those who know where to look.